Hey there, entrepreneur, and welcome to today's show. We have a fantastic story for you. I'm here with Edgar Blazona, and he is a modernist American furniture designer. I think that might be the first one we've had on the show, folks. And he's founder of the wildly popular DTC sofa brand, BenchMade Modern. And even more interesting, no offense to your company there, Edgar, he is a high school dropout turned graffiti artist, turned serial entrepreneur, got his first start in furniture because of need, because he was essentially young, broke, and had no furniture in his apartment. So, and with need comes innovation. And I know that with this episode, there's going to be a lot of laughs and a lot of inspiration. So welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this and so on. You hit it right on the head. You know, I'm all those things. It's a little bit embarrassing these days, but I am a high school dropout, turned graffiti artist, turned entrepreneur.
I think it's fantastic. There was just an article released in the Boston Globe over here about there's like a neurosurgeon who is a graffiti artist on the side. So in between surgery, he literally goes to Graffiti Alley in Boston. Really? And you'll catch him there. And he's got like a mohawk too, which imagine a neurosurgeon with a mohawk. It's awesome. But he like works at top hospitals all over the country. And that's what he does for fun.
That's cool. If you think about that, it just goes to show you that what we do in our spare time and who we become later on and all that has really, I guess, a lot to do with it, but not, for me, graffiti was a way of doing art as well as rebelling against everything. Right. And so I was an artist and a rebel, and I could put them together and kind of create, what I was doing at the time. It was a perfect fit for me.
Yeah. Well, take us back, friend. Take us back. Tell us the story because first and foremost, tell people what the tagline of your company is.
We are rebellious luxury. Again, pulling that back from my youth kind of into what I'm doing today.
Yeah, I love it. That is number one. It's just catchy. It's just good job to your marketing people or you or whoever came up with it. Yep. But take us back and tell us how, you got to be that rebellious luxury owner.
Yeah. So, in the 90s, I left high school. I left it at, my senior year. I really realized that I was no longer getting anything out of high school, and I was purely just going almost because I was forced to go. And I had been, planning on moving out and living on my own and all of those things that a kid does, although, or dreams of, but then I actually did it. But when I got out of my parents' home and all that, I realized I had no money for furniture. I had no money for, a rug or, the things that I had become accustomed to. And while I got a GED, I quickly got the GED and kind of proved to myself and proved to my parents that I was quote unquote smart enough, to leave. Yeah. I started, making furniture, and this is before YouTube or anything like that. You couldn't just look up how to weld, and so I got a welder and I'm putting these two things together, oh my God, am I going to shock myself to death? All of those things. And I ended up making a dining table and chairs, and one chair.
Single one for you, no friends.
That's it, one chair, right? And I sold it through a gallery, and I got, $400 in cash. And, a stack of 20s. This is the most money one had ever seen in any point in their life. That's how I felt, and I had been doing furniture ever since. And it's been a wild ride. And like I said, I'm self-taught, but it's that entrepreneurial thing that has driven me. And even going back to my graffiti days, I transitioned my graffiti crew, my friends, into a business. And I started this business called Graffiti Graphics. And I think that really primed me into being able to present myself to adults, and in this form of this illegal thing that I'm selling that we're going to do for your wall, and you're going to give us a bunch of cash. We're going to paint the wall. And I think that was the start of my entrepreneurial kind of, endeavors.
That's very cool. I mean, you are not the first. Number one, you were by no means the first person to come on the show who's, been ridiculously successful, but dropped out of high school. So I want to note that, and I'm going to remember that from when my children hit high school, to remember that point. Right. But I like the fact that you've got that right and left brain part of you, right? Like what you just articulated, because I'm a theater major, by the way. So
Okay.
shout out to all the artists out there. But,
Yep.
you can bring, I think people really underestimate what art can do for a business person, right?
Well, that's interesting, because I often speak about, people ask like, well, I have a kid who's in college, right? A fancy college, right?
Yep.
But that's perfect for him, right? It's right for him, right? He doesn't have a chance to go out and leave high school. Like, that's just not his thing. But for me and for the people doing art, I think there's an interesting thing there. The artists that we know of, right? Those are the ones, there's very few that were just kind of found and made famous, right? The artists we know of have right and left brain because they've had to go out and market themselves.
Yes. Yep.
That's why we know of those artists, right? Is because they're just as good of building their brand as they are doing their art.
Exactly. It's interesting. My master's was in running arts organizations, like nonprofit. Okay. And it was always really interesting to me because you would have the pure artists that started organizations, but then they would get into so much trouble because they used to have the phrase like art for art's sake, right? Mm-hmm. They wanted to run these organizations and they wanted to do this thing, but they didn't know, like you just said, how to monetize the brand. So then you would bring in me, like I was the left brain to the right brain because I understood how they worked. But, I think it's a superpower when you have both. I think all CEOs should have both on a lot of levels.
Yeah. And many don't. Right. And I think that's where then you have like the two-founder dynamic, right? Yes. We all know in raising capital. In fact, when I raised capital, I was kind of not shunned, but I was maybe didn't get the best of meetings because I was a single founder. Right. And they're looking for these founders that have, either the creative or the engineering skills, right? This is the yin and the yang kind of thing. The engineering skills, and then the other side is the business skills. And it's hard to have both. Yeah.
I mean, which is really interesting to me because I'm sorry, two founders come with their own, like I've been privy to some interesting situations where I'm sitting between the two, right? Trying to kind of, transition things or, work them through and mediate some things. So, I understand why they look at that from a funding perspective, but I'm going to look at it as people missed out if you weren't in those rooms, right? Because look at you now.
Yeah, look at you now. Yeah.
So, talk to us about some adversity that you dealt with, because I know you said you have lots of good stories and stuff. So let's talk about the adversity bucket. Like, do you have anything that's top of mind where, you didn't want to keep going or anything?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, there's so many sides of it. Just right off the top of my head, when we got into the sofa business, I had a brand called True Modern, and we were selling product. I was wholesaling product that I was importing from Thailand. It was modern kids furniture. Yeah. And in 2008, the world just kind of fell apart. The economy fell apart. And I was stuck with two warehouses, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, filled with inventory. Yeah. And you know what? Sales just stopped. I mean, I was selling one piece a day. Wow. Right? One piece a day doesn't pay anywhere near anything.
It's going to take you a long time to work down those two warehouses, right?
Right. And I'm not only the inventory, but the rent of those warehouses. And so I thought, boy, there better be something better to do here. And that's how I started with sofas. Well, turns out that you can't convince a factory that you're a sofa designer or that you're a sofa business unless you actually sell sofas. So what I ended up doing was I went to a smaller manufacturer, a guy who would make basically custom sofas for you. Yeah. And I would pay retail cost, let's say call it $1,500. I'd pay $1,500 and then I'd put it on my site and I'd sell it for $1,500. I made zero money. And I had all these sofas and I had this big site. And look, I'm in the sofa business.
And I'm breaking even. Yep.
But no one knows I'm breaking even, right? Yeah. Or even losing money, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I went to a new factory, 6 months, 8 months later. And hey, I'm in the sofa business. I need to get your best pricing on this. Turns out $700. You can get these sofas for $700 because I'm now a sofa guy, right?
Yeah.
And that was one way that I was able to kind of maneuver my way, along. Now, I made some big mistakes, right? We had some tough times. I was selling sofas. I was collecting sales tax. Well, it turns out you have to give the sales tax money to the state.
Yeah, that would be a thing. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
You would
crap.
think, right? Well, we were having some tough months, and, we used that sales tax account money, to pay off some bills, to pay the store rent and all that.
Yikes.
And, I'll pay it back, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Rob Peter, PayPal.
yeah. And it was a big slap, and it really hurt us. And it scared me, frankly. And, I think it's those times when you realize, like, wow, okay, now I got to get my head around this business, right? And understand things a little more. The artist in me had kind of taken over. Well, now the business side of me had to really kind of gather things up and do a better job, because we're talking about a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're still breaking even or losing money, but it was a larger number. So the sales tax number was a big, giant number and a lot to work through.
And I mean, kudos for number one, admitting that, right? Number two, telling our audience, because I think a lot of the times people don't realize, like, you can come out of the womb a damn CEO, right?
Yeah.
None of us did, right? Even the CEOs, like the most popular CEOs didn't come out like that. And especially if you are a founder and CEO and you didn't get an MBA or you didn't get whatever, there are these times where you're just trial by firing everything.
Yes.
And you don't learn unless you fuck it up, right?
Yeah, I agree. And that's where that imposter syndrome thing comes from. I think a lot of people don't realize how strong that is. That if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's this feeling of being an imposter in this role, right? Yeah. Like I'm the CEO, or I'm the designer, or I'm not really a designer. I'm not really a CEO. And, and so you kind of have that feeling, even though you're having success. Right. And so I think checking in with other CEOs and other founders who maybe will admit that as well. Right. Yes. And some of the biggest CEOs and founders will still say they still have that feeling. It's a weird feeling. And I think it takes some time to be comfortable with yourself and realize, you know what, I am pretty badass, and I'm, I can run the show. I can do it, and I can do a good job of it.
I mean, and I think I would think way more highly of a CEO I do in general that would say, I don't know, or I'm going to fuck this up, or and admits that versus I'm not a big fan of the all-knowing CEO model, because that's impossible. Number one. And number two, we all should be changing and growing. And if you're scaling a company or you want the company to grow, you have to grow too. So you don't, it's impossible to know everything.
Changing and growing is important, right? And I think in the furniture industry, right, which is what I was disrupting, right? I'm a furniture industry disruptor. I've got a bunch of old school people have been running this furniture industry, let's say from North Carolina, right? That's kind of the home of upholstery for a long, long time, and there was a time we won some awards early on, it's like, these guys were still like faxing orders, and we're like, we're emailing, and they're like, well, we can't accept your order because it's not on fax. Well,
oh my gosh,
so these guys are having to change and adapt, and along comes the internet, and then along comes direct to consumer and all that. And I think it's an interesting reminder that, look, let's not become too jaded in this is how we've always done it, and this is how we'll continue.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is too, is like, you're only as good as your last maybe that's a theater person to me. You're only as good as your last show. Right. So 100%. If your revenue may be hitting the marks and stuff like that. But again, I guess it's just me. I'm always scared of stagnation, right? When I can no longer learn anything from a situation, that's when I kind of release and find something different. But you're right. I think the most dangerous thing to a company and probably a human being is like, well, this is the way we've always done it, which drives me nuts.
Hello, Dad, like, did your dad just say that to you? Like, Jesus, And so I feel like I'm constantly trying to kind of push that envelope. I know some new guy is going to come along and push that on me, but I at least want to say it. I kind of check myself, like, did that just sound like my dad? My dad's not even really like that, but the dad, I just, that's sort of like, old dog, no new tricks kind of thing.
Right. And I think like what you said, there's inevitably going to be somebody coming up, right, that is going to do it to you, but hopefully you will be more open to say, no, let's try it that way. Or, oh, this is cool. Because I think it takes a lot of self-confidence too, to know, and security in yourself to know when to be like, okay, that's cool. Like, it's not going to be a threat to me if we try this. It's going to innovate.
The next thing up, I think, is to surround yourself with people, right?
Right.
Like, if one can surround themselves with, new ideas, new inspiration, and then be willing to be open to it. And just like you said, be not threatened by it. I think that's the key. I think you find so many CEOs that are threatened by the up and coming, right? Instead of like utilizing them to like help grow and help promote and make it a much more success based on this kind of new energy that's coming into the company.
Yeah. And why do you think that is a threat to them? Do you think it's because of the unknown, or do you think it's because, they just don't want to change? Or, I mean, it could obviously be a range of things,
let's break that down, right?
Yeah.
We get up every morning at the same time, right?
Yep. Yeah.
We stop at Starbucks. We get the same freaking coffee, frappe or whatever it is, time after time. We go to the same lunch spots, right? We're comfortable with what we know, right? Along comes the new guy, and he's pushing on that, what we know. And I think it's not necessarily a fault of the CEO, because it's just kind of built into us, right? Yeah. But it takes a lot to get outside of that safety zone and be open to these new ideas. It's hard. It's hard for me, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, I would never say like, oh my gosh, you're an awful CEO. You didn't see that coming, or you didn't. That's impossible, right? Because I think if you've never run something, or you've never been a leader, and I mean, I've never officially been a CEO, but I do run my own company. You're responsible for people. You're responsible for a lot, right? Yeah. And shareholders and whoever else you have to kind of report into. And I mean, it becomes hard to innovate or step outside the box.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you have to design, right?
Well, right.
I've been calling it my COVID slump, because frankly, COVID has been really difficult. It's been good for the company. I'm almost embarrassed to say that, right? COVID kind of helped the company in growing our sales. Right. Yeah. It lifted our sales because everyone's in their homes. They are, they're searching, they're in their living rooms. They're like, gosh, this janky sofa I've been sitting on for way too long. Like, they're searching for new sofas, and sofas were selling. Right. But at the same time, there's this, there's a little bit of discomfort for me in that in itself, right? Because we kind of are taking advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
But then I'm personally in what I've been calling this COVID slump from a design aspect, right? I don't have that creativity fire, right? And so what do I do? Talk about trying to drag yourself out. I got to get out. I got to go see what made me, a good designer to begin with, right? How did I kind of keep that motivation going? And for me, it's all about like seeing architecture, street art, going back to my street art days, all of that is like, it kind of creates this fire. Even though I'm looking at this like amazing painting on a wall, I'm also in my head thinking, now I got to design a badass sofa, right? What can I do to, keep it going?
I love the fact that your point of view on this. We had another CEO on, she was CEO of a financial company, and she was saying like, she makes a point of doing things that are outside of kind of the typical CEO role in her daily life to keep her creative juices going and to keep her kind of thinking out of the box and her ability to kind of innovate going. Right. Yes. And like you just described, like if you were just at a computer doing, I guess, like all CEO things all day, whatever everybody does.
Whatever that is.
Totally. I think you would lose a really big part of your edge. Cause I mean, rebellion is your thing. So you can't rebel if you just become complacent, right?
Yes. If you just become like sitting in a cube with the data edge. Yeah, I totally agree. And for me, it's about architecture. It's about seeing art, being involved in those kind of things, a little bit of like guerrilla, like, oh, let's just have a party right here on this side of the road and celebrate this bridge, or, whatever it is, like those kind of things inspire me to keep moving, and it keeps me creative.
Would you say like that's the part that kind of gets you through adversity too? Is that creative outlet, or, what do you think?
Well, in all honesty, I love making things, right? I still am a maker, right? I
Right.
still have, a full set of equipment, real machines,
Right.
welders. I still enjoy making stuff. I still enjoy making weird stuff. I go to Burning Man every year.
Awesome.
I make some weird stuff, and I'm sitting here right now. I'm at home working from home. I'm looking out at, I've got a shipping container that I've made into a swim up pool bar, like
Great.
those are the kind of things that I enjoy making so that I can then be creative in my day to day. And it definitely keeps me motivated.
Yeah. I mean, and there's something to be said about, art from a resilience perspective. Like, I know a lot of artists, and I would say like adversity typically makes their artistic abilities stronger on a lot of levels, right? Because they put it into their art, or it rejuvenates them, like you're saying, or whatever it may be. But, and like you said, that allows you to balance that left and right brain and show up and do the numbers every day. Right.
I wonder if that's why musicians always write about adversity as well, right?
Yeah.
Or their breakups or,
Yeah, no, I think it is, and it's the reason, like, I remember when I was doing a lot more acting and stuff like that, like I will take a like knockdown, drag out dramatic role any day.
Yes.
Over a comedy role. Comedy is actually harder than drama when you're thinking about it from an acting perspective, but it's that ability to use those emotions that we're not allowed to kind of play with all the time and put it into something cool. Right. So I think you're right. I think that's exactly why, like, every country song is my dog died and my truck died and everything else. Yeah. But so let's talk about, in the last couple of minutes, I want to hear about, scaling, because like you just said, what did you do? You increased it by 100%, your revenue in 2020.
We've continued.
Tell me about that, because that is, everyone will look at that and be like, that's great. But that is also an operational nightmare sometimes.
It is an operational nightmare. And it's hard to, going into the COVID era as well, like, supplies became incredibly hard to get. Foam in particular, foam manufacturing companies were struggling to get foam, a product within the foam, a chemical within the foam. During that big, Texas freeze, one of the plants, broke and the other one was offline. And so a fundamental material wasn't able to be had to make the foam. And so everyone went on restriction. So, we had to do some crazy things, and to get the foam and so on. And that was all part of this growth, right? How are we going to meet demand? And I think that there's, when you're building these systems, some of our systems are automated and, kind of the behind the scenes stuff. I'm not necessarily talking about the machinery. I'm talking about like sort of the office function and how we communicate with the customers and all of that. And we keep looking inward of how do we solve those inner office, struggles to communicate with that many people as things are skyrocketing up on the same amount of staff, right? And it's those things that we were in a pretty good position because we were developing the software, kind of our operating software, so to speak, in-house.
Nice.
So we weren't stuck on just like an Oracle or a, some big, NetSuite, something like that. We were able to kind of like rejigger it to work for that growth. But it hasn't been easy, that's for sure. And making a custom, sofa, to the customer spec is tough. It's not an easy feat in the timeline. Right now we're at 5 weeks.
It's pretty great.
That's pretty great. The country is at like 6 months, right? And so, in general, that's kind of the standard right now. If you're buying anything made from the US, it's about a 6-month lead time. Wow. That's a half a year. Like I no longer I don't want the sofa in a half a year. Like I
could have painted my living room 5 times, but
totally. I don't want that red sofa that I was like, made this bad decision in the first place. And now it's 6 months later and I really don't want a red sofa.
No, I mean, I gave you a lot of credit when I read that stat because my background, like I spent a long time in tech and operational excellence. And I just, there is that breaking point, like you mentioned around, like you made a good point. You're doing an elevated level of business with the same amount of bodies because you haven't broken through where you can hire, and even hiring takes time.
And we pride ourselves on the best customer experience. Our whole thing is turning the customer into a brand advocate. I drill this home every day, right? If stuff goes wrong, right? If a shipping problem happens, or if we make something wrong, or God forbid, if something happens, right? And it does. I mean, the amount of orders that we have issues from time to time. Of course. But we have to turn those issues, and our goal is to actually take that issue and turn them into a brand advocate. And when I say that, I mean like at the end of the day, that customer is like, yeah, they brought the sofa, it fell off the truck, it was a total disaster, a wreck, but they got me another sofa. I love this company. They were so great. And I'm going to tell my neighbor and my other neighbor and all that. And it's those moments where we can take that experience and change it. Like I always say, the sofa buying experience shouldn't suck, period.
Like, I mean, any buying experience. Can we just say that across the board? Can we just make any buying experience not suck? Like,
why is it that furniture experience always sucks? Yeah, I mean, if I had $1 for every dinner party I was at, that someone said, "Oh, you're a furniture maker? You got a furniture company? I bought this sofa from, unknown name company, and it never arrived, or it arrived broken, or everybody tells me that." And that was one of the reasons why I started BenchMade Modern, was to try to like fix that issue. I just got tired of hearing that.
But I think I like your perspective on when there are issues, right? Because I see a lot of people panic, right? You panic when there's an issue. Oh my God. And then you do everything in your power to make it better, but they do it from the wrong motivation.
Yes.
Right. They do it to Band-Aid it and get it through. Right. Yeah. Versus like, no, that's part of we look at it as part of the experience that's inevitably going to happen. But to your point, they're going to come out being like, they fixed it, because it doesn't take like a lot. I mean, it takes a lot, but you know what I mean? Like they just want to be acknowledged.
Yeah, but you need to more than just fix it. And this is what I tell my team, right? It's not about just sending them another sofa. Right. That's where I think people fall off, right? If, okay, I got this shirt and you sent the wrong color, and I email, info at, and I get a new one, right? I'm irritated, right? I got that shirt specifically because I was headed to a pool party, whatever the case may be. Yeah. And now it's the wrong color and all that. Now I'm like bummed on this company, right? Yeah. Even though I got the new shirt, I'm still bummed on the company, right? And so for us, it's not about just fixing the problem. It's about fixing the experience. Yes. Right? There's a big difference to that. There
is. Yeah. I mean, experience is what everybody is about nowadays, right? It's experiential marketing, right? Like it's such a big deal to people because they want to feel seen, heard, because there's enough of what you just described in the world. And I mean, it kind of makes me sad that, like, I mean, good for you, but you stand out because you offer that, right? Like
we do.
We would hope that maybe like more people would do that.
Yeah. You know who changed the world on that was Bonobos. I'm sorry, not Bonobos. The shoe guy, what was it? The guy who would send the shoes. Oh, God, the name's the name. I can't find it now, but Zappos. That's it.
Yes, Zappos.
Remember Zappos? Yep. I mean, it was like a game changer. Like, we'll send you a bunch of shoes, try them on, and send them back. Period.
Yeah.
Like,
and people are like, what? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, there's that experience that changed things, and
but it must be hard too, because you are disrupting with that. Right. And training people. Like I have somebody who I'm close with who actually owns a massive painting company, and he has to reprogram people because they all automatically think it's going to be a shit show. Yes. Like when his guys come in and when his company comes in, they automatically are like, think that he's not going to call back, think that nothing's going to happen, so you guys probably have to re-educate a lot on that too, right?
We have a lot of those things in the quote unquote funnel, right? We're driving these people through the funnel. Yeah. And whether you realize it or not, I send you this giant box of swatches, right? It's like a 12 by 12 box, couple inches thick. It's got 100 swatches in it of nice size fabrics and leathers, right? Yeah. I send it second day air. Okay. It's the first one in the door. It's an amazing box, right? When you get this box, you're like, okay, wow, it's an amazing box. But what's really happening and what you don't really understand is I'm kind of like in your head of like, no, this is the real deal. Like these people are real, you know, and while you're getting all your other swatches and they come in an envelope and they're not quite as great, in the meantime, you're like kind of in the back of your head, like, oh, wow, this company, like that company was cool. And we call it a micro conversion. And we do that as we drive you down through the funnel, and we start to get you invested in the product, right? The customization is more than just you get to pick a custom sofa. It's that now you're vested in this product, right? You've customized it. You've chosen the color. You've made it the size to your room. But at the same point in time, this is a sofa that you made,
right?
And that's that whole experience is designed like that. And lo and behold, guess what? Our return rate is super low, right? Yeah. Because we send a great quality product, but you made it, you designed it.
You got the buy-in further upstream in the process.
And you're like, wow, like I had this made and it's super cool and all that. And of course, then you're going to extra love it. It's not going to be like a Zappos shoes where you're like, I'll just return it back.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think a lot of people negate what you just said. What did you say? It was you called it micro conversions?
Micro conversion. Yeah.
People negate that so much. Yeah, I think like when I'm thinking about it, thank you for giving me the terminology. I don't know why I'd never heard that before, but I talk to clients a lot about that because especially if they're launching something or they're this or they're that, like it's those little steps where you have a chance with the client or the customer to gain their trust every little step of the way.
I really love those tactile experiences, right? The swatches are tactile. We also have, if you go to one of the printout pages, you can print out, you can hit print and we'll send you a giant roll of paper that is your sofa's exact size, like to the dimension, giant sectional sofa, this huge thing you put together that's the actual custom size of your sofa. You can have your husband laying between the arms. Does he fit? Can he take a nap there? You can sit all your family. We get all these pictures back of people sitting on the floor, sitting on these pieces of paper, right? Yeah. It's a tactile experience. It's all about that micro conversion. I'm like kind of giving the tricks of the trade here, but the whole idea is to show the experience and to get people invested in this thing. And by bringing them down through this funnel in that manner, they walk away at the end of the day extremely excited about their purchase. Right.
That's amazing with the paper. I hope that's good social media content right there because that's hysterical and awesome. Right? Like the marketer in me was like, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah.
But anyways, this is fantastic. And thank you so much. Is there any kind of last bits that you want to leave our entrepreneurs with? Maybe whatever's in your head. You've given us a lot.
Whatever's in my head. Honestly, I'm an artist, right? I have so much going on.
Wrong question to ask.
Totally. They should definitely check us out at BenchMade Modern, .com. And I have a code for you guys, Resilient15 for 15% off. Use that. The best thing to do is to go to our site. And I swear by these swatches, like order some swatches. Just let's see what happens to you when you order these swatches. It's hard to pass up, to be honest.
Sounds awesome. No, it sounds fantastic. I mean, it's just, again, it's all about the experiential marketing and the experience that you bring your people through. And again, rebellious luxury, folks. I love it.
But then at the end of the day, it's what's under the hood as well, right?
Yes, it is.
Have a good quality piece. So it's not all just, the experience. It's after we leave your home and a year later, what does your sofa look like?
Yeah. I mean, but you have to have that kind of magic combination where you actually deliver on what your experience is.
And I actually, my big thing is put as much money into the under the hood as possible, right? Put the best materials you possibly can because it will have longevity. And I look at it as like, it might cost us a little bit more, but I'm not going to get a return, right? The return is more the headache than anything.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't, I don't want to say a lot of people because that generalizes, but I think it's more common nowadays for the opposite of what you just discussed, right? Like, let's get it fast and out the door and turn it around and stuff. And if it breaks, they'll just buy another one or whatever that is, and it's just, I like your approach on that a lot.
Thank you. It's a little bit selfish, in one regards. I really don't want to hear bad from you, a year from now. Of
course you don't. And that's the artist in you too, right? Like, please don't critique my art.
Yeah, totally. I'll leave nothing to be critiqued.
That's amazing. Well, thank you very much for being on today, Edgar. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.